Okay, so I thought it might be interesting to compare the new Tab P11 Pro Gen 2 by Lenovo versus the iPad 9, since they're pretty similar in price, to see which is the better option. So let's go ahead and get started. The iPad usually starts around $329. Cost of the P11 Pro is going to be a little bit more expensive. So far there's two different versions available in the United States. You've got one that starts at $399. Kind of weird, but for $30 more you get one with the same amount of storage, 128 gigabytes of storage, but it's got 6 gigabytes of RAM instead of 4. But it's already been on sale several times at closer to $350. Screen sizes are going to be slightly different here. You get a larger 11.2 inch OLED display, 2560 by 1536 resolution on the P11 Pro with up to 120 Hz refresh rate versus the 10.2 inch IPS display. For the iPad, 2160 by 1620 resolution, 60 Hz refresh rate, and as you can see, putting these next to each other, the iPad looks a little more dated, but it does have the home button there with the Touch ID fingerprint scanner, and I know some people still prefer those. I feel like both have pretty nice and fairly bright screens with good contrast. Which one has better screen quality is probably going to be somewhat subjective, but when putting them next to each other in person, I noticed the Lenovo tablet is a tad brighter and the colors are a little bit different between the two. The P11 Pro appears to lean towards a little bit warmer colors, while the iPad is a little bit cooler, if that makes sense. Sort of a bluish tint to the iPad, more of a yellowish tint to the P11 Pro. Nice thing is you can watch YouTube videos up to 4K resolution on both, full HD playback on apps like Netflix, and overall movies and shows look really nice on these two. I don't really like the huge black bars on the iPad, and you're gonna get darker blacks on the P11 Pro, but I don't think you can go wrong with either one. Another important feature in these tablets is going to be battery life. Get an 8000 milliamp hour battery in the P11 Pro, 8557 milliamp hour battery in the iPad 9. And in my testing, the P11 Pro lasted over 10 hours compared to just under 6 hours for the iPad 9. Both of these should have plenty of juice to get you through a normal workday, obviously depending on what kind of stuff you're doing. But yeah, if you want the tablet with better battery life, you're going to want to go with Lenovo. Now when it comes to performance, the P11 Pro is surprisingly good for this price, especially when you compare it to other Android tablets in this price range. But between these two, the iPad 9 is going to be a little bit more powerful, and I feel like the iPad 9 is always underrated when it comes to its performance. Maybe because it looks a little more dated compared to the iPad Air and also the cheaper price. But both should be fine for most everyday types of stuff that you might do on here. So they won't be as good as some of the more expensive tablets out there, but still pretty good for the price. So if you want the tablet with better performance, you're going to want to go with the iPad. If you're wanting to do some gaming on these two tablets, the P11 Pro does a decent job with games like PUBG Mobile, Asphalt 9, even Apex Legends Mobile does alright on here. Pretty obvious which one is better at gaming. The Lenovo tablet does a decent job, but games don't look quite as sharp as on the iPad. Just something to keep in mind when trying to decide between these two. Then when it comes to software, the P11 Pro comes with Android 12, which is pretty nice and close to stock Android. You get things like the Google Entertainment Space left of the home screen, which has some nice options or suggestions of stuff to watch, listen to, those types of things. If you don't have the Google Discover newsfeed over there, the Entertainment Space is not a bad option to have. The iPad 9 is currently on iPadOS 15.7, which is pretty similar to most other iPads if you've used the ones here in the last couple years. iPadOS 16 should be a nice upgrade, I believe later this year, if you plan on doing more multitasking on here. But I still wouldn't consider either of these as a laptop replacement, but you are able to connect a keyboard and mouse to use on both. The P11 Pro is going to feel slightly different once you switch it over to its productivity mode, which is sort of like Samsung DeX if you're familiar with that, but maybe not quite as refined. Unfortunately, both tablets don't come with the Precision Pen 3 or Apple Pencil, so you're going to have to buy those separately. But in my opinion, definitely one accessory that I would recommend if you have either of these two tablets. It's just a better way to take notes or just move around the software. You can use the Precision Pen 3 in a few more areas in the software compared to the Apple Pencil, and it's kind of a toss-up on which one is better. You can charge the Precision Pen on the back of the P11 Pro, sort of like an S Pen, but you have to use the charging port on the iPad, which can be sort of awkward. Both actually have similar tips that they use as well. This one might be more of a personal preference, but I'm leaning towards the Precision Pen 3 just slightly. So there's going to be lots of variables when it comes to the software. Some people may like or dislike one or the other, but for me, I actually like both. In reality, you're going to be able to do most of the same stuff on either tablet. And again, this may just come down to personal preference on which software is better for you. When it comes to the speakers on these two tablets, sort of an interesting comparison here. You've got two speakers on each side of the P11 Pro, where you only have the bottom firing speakers on the iPad, but surprisingly still sounds pretty good for only being two speakers, louder than you would think, and it still has a headphone jack, something you're not gonna get with the P11 Pro. Let me give you a quick sample of each just to see what you think. Cameras on these two tablets are not going to be the greatest out there. Still pretty decent for tablets though. It can be used for Zoom meetings, video conference calls, that sort of thing if you have to. You get an 8 megapixel wide angle lens on the back of the iPad, 12 megapixel ultra wide on the front facing, then a 13 megapixel rear facing for the P11 Pro, and then 8 megapixel on the front. Again, sort of personal preference here between the two, but I feel like the P11 Pro has too much sharpening in their processing, but then the iPad makes skin color looks too pink or orange. So sort of some good, some bad for each tablet. Here's a quick sample just to give you an idea of what to expect. So hopefully this video gives you a little closer look at these two more affordable tablets from Lenovo and Apple. One other thing I forgot to mention is the new iPad 10 is right around the corner. So if you are leaning towards the iPad 9, you may want to wait a couple more weeks to see what the iPad 10 looks like. Although that also could mean you can get the iPad 9 even cheaper. So if you've made it this far into the video, you may want to say thanks by subscribing, and don't forget to give a thumbs up if this video was helpful. This is Brian from Fishbee Productions. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.